about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So we keep seeing headlines how colorectal cancer or colorectal tumors are rising exponentially in younger populations. And I think one report says there was a 6-fold increase in younger individuals since the year 2000. So in the last 24 years, more younger people are getting colon cancer. And there's tons of reasons for this. We've spoken about it, but I don't think we're having real honest conversations with the younger population, with our public officials, with those who are running Obamacare. And I think it's time we do this. So, colon cancer, every time I write, Colon Cancer Awareness Month is in March, so I always write the latest statistics. Usually there's about 106,000 cases each year, 46,000 new cases of rectal cancer, 106,000 cases of colon cancer, 53,000 people die each year. These numbers keep going up. Colorectal cancer went from the 4th to the 3rd leading cause of death. And the risk factors have always been, well, is it in the family? Like me, both sides of my family have colon cancer. So I've been getting colonoscopies pretty regularly since my late 30s. If you use tobacco, if you drink alcohol, if you're obese, if you have a poor diet, junk food, a lot of processed foods, if you're not very active, physical inactivity, if you have diabetes, if you've ever had a history of precancerous polyps, if you've had a history of inflammatory bowel disease. So when you look at the risk factors, most people will say, well, yeah, but you had to use tobacco for a long time. You had to have used alcohol for a long time. You had to have been obese for a long time. Why younger people? The average age of people getting colon cancer is getting younger and younger and younger. Well, is it because people are getting obese younger? Is it because what we're smoking now isn't the typical cigarettes that might have a more predictable colon cancer onset in one's 60s? But what if, and I'm not saying this is the case, but this is a theory, what if vaping is accelerating that? What if it's our sexual practices? Now, we have the HPV vaccine. Not everybody gets the HPV vaccine, but HPV is linked to rectal cancer. And if we are sexually active, if we are using other orifices in our sexual repertoire, are we exposing tissue to the HPV virus? Is it that it's becoming more fulminant such that it just kind of invades that whole area, such that if a woman has it vaginally or in her cervix, it'll migrate down to the rectal area? We don't talk about that. It's not a very sexy conversation to discuss. Are we having constipation crises such that if we are exposed to these horrible nitrites and nitrates and processed preservatives in our food, it's having a heck of an opportunity sitting there bombarding our colonic mucosa and the lining of our colon? And I don't want to scare people, but I guess in 2020, the American Cancer Society said there were 17,900 colorectal cancer cases in people under age 50. Kids are starting to be diagnosed with them. Teens are starting to increase in diagnosis. So we need to figure out what's going on. They said the 40 to 44% age group had an increase of 37%, but the highest incidence rate, reaching 20 per 100,000 people in 2020. So incidence rate is the number of new cases of a disease divided by the number of people at risk for the disease. And so you aren't really supposed to be seeing the changes to our colon and cancer of that area early on, unless you have some, a genetic predisposition and one of these rare genetic disorders that can cause, very early onset of this type of cancer. So my guess is we're sitting too much, we're constipated, we're eating crap, we're obese, we're smoking and drinking, and there's HPV exposure that is not being necessarily mitigated. We have to have some honest conversations with people. And then part of that conversation has to explain what are some signs and symptoms of colorectal cancer. Patients will call up saying, I need hemorrhoid medication. And I'm like, oh, why? Because I wiped today when I had a bowel movement, there was blood. Okay, if you saw blood when you wiped, you got to get seen immediately. Even if it is a hemorrhoid. Why do you have hemorrhoids? Is it because you have a mass and your body's trying to push around it? Now, I know this is the topic of conversation people want when they're eating a meal, but this is something we need to have an open conversation about. People are treating themselves and calling in because they think they have a tear or a hemorrhoid, and I am blown away at how many people are calling in with blood in their stool or blood when they wipe. Now, I'm not saying that's colon cancer or colorectal cancer, but that could be a sign. Bloating, abdominal pain, constipation, change in your stools being very like pencil thin and different shaped than it usually is. Loss of weight. And it's interesting because when I spoke to family members about colon cancer screening, they're like, well, I'm fine. I'll go in if I'm losing weight or if I'm having blood, but I haven't lost any weight. I don't see blood in the stool, so I'm good. By the time you see that, by the time you start losing weight, by the time you have chronic blood in your stool, you're farther along in terms of stage. So please, for the love of the Lord, get yourself checked out in person. I understand there's Cologuards and there's other ways that people are screening themselves. Some of these screens are really, really nice, but if you have blood in the stool, we recommend seeing a gastroenterologist and they will decide what the best screening is. And most likely, they're going to recommend a colonoscopy. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Considered by most, optimized curcumin is one of the few bioavailable and highly absorbable curcumin products on the market. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch. Since most chronic diseases have inflammation, our optimized curcumin seems to be a perfect addition to any nutritional program. It makes sense to me that preventing or reducing inflammation is a key component to our overall health. The Mayo Clinic found that curcumin can decrease swelling and inflammation, has antioxidant properties, and research suggests that curcumin can prevent cancer, or at least slow the spread of cancer, and in many instances make chemotherapy more effective. It protects our healthy cells even from radiation. TotalWellness.com, where we help you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen, and big thanks to Daniel, our producer. So this is a very common question, is when do kids quit being pains in the ass? Well, when do your teens start taking your advice? When do your teens mend relationships with you? When can you bond with your teens? When do things start getting better when it comes to your relationship with your 16-year-old, your 17-year-old, your 18-year-old? And it's a fascinating concept when kids mature and when kids grow and develop. So they go through these stages. When they're a baby, it's all about mommy, daddy, where's my parents, where's my food, where's my eats, gimme. Yeah. And then, they're like, but I could do this. And they like kind of doing some things. Yeah. And then they start to mimic people around them, whether it's an older sibling or it's a parent. And they're like, well, no, I'm not a baby. I want to do that. And then they learn that they don't want to copy and mimic. Now they want to have an independent streak. They want to have their own identity. And that identity could be, I'm a baseball player, or I'm really good at math, or I'm a girl, or I'm a boy. Then that identity can evolve, right, which we're seeing with studies as it talks to gender identity, or as it pertains to, people's likes. Are they a big video game fan, and they change, which can happen. Some do, some don't. All right, and then they start to get into this phase where, all right, I'm good. And my parents, rather than being a asset, are a hindrance. They're a liability. I want to go on a date, and they're saying no. I want to go out. I want to be out later, and parents are saying no. And now the no's have higher consequences. And if I do something they don't like, they up the nose. And so many teens are like, I don't have to be here. And when you look back in caveman days, 12, 13-year-olds, once they were sexually mature, they were out there and at propagating and starting their own families. But in American society, you are technically a child till you're 18. So you have sexually mature children, depending on their stages and their adolescence, beards, mustaches, full-on breasts, wanting to be out there doing adult things, but they are bridled by a legal system. They're bridled by immaturity. They're bridled by finances. They're bridled by school. School has to end at 18. I think school should end at 16. I think by sophomore year, if you do school right, as I've described how school should be, where morning core classes, afternoon, all the practical learning, like the trades and rotations in most of the fields, whether it's education and banking and medicine and carpentry and electricity, know how to hunt, fish, know how to survival skills, self-defense, etc. All of that by sophomore year, so that junior and senior year is your associate's degree or your free college. Doesn't cost the taxpayer any more money. And now anybody, by the time they're age 18, they're either licensed, they either have a trade, they either have a associate's degree, and they're ready for the outside world. But the way we're doing it now is these kids are just sitting there in class, texting, waiting to be 18. And so your kids now are not liking you. And you're a little frustrated because you have a young, strapping, healthy, beautiful person that could be, one, very productive, be very helpful around the house, could be your third parent helping you with babysitting, it could be making money, and they're not. And so this frustration isn't always on the teen or on the parent. we've kind of built this system. And so having, two boys, as teenagers, they were ridiculous. And I kept telling them, I go, if you were my roommate in college, I would have kicked your butt out. There's no way I would have lived with you. If I would have not dated you. I mean, really? You would be the worst boyfriend. And they were ridiculous. They were, just their attitudes, and they were, and socks and underwear everywhere. And I was like, really? But it's interesting because now that they are adults, my relationship with them way different, way better. Now, I always kind of had still a good relationship with them because I worked so much that my time with them was so, concrete and concise that I rarely wanted to yell at them or punish them or whatever. But yeah, they got snotty and they were rebellious and but how I did it, and I think the reason why I've been really, really lucky and blessed to have the relationship I have with my adult boys is anytime they disagreed with a decision I made, I shared with them the logic behind it. Okay, this isn't, well, mommy's on her period. This isn't that. Which, by the way, I did pretty good on my period. I think I got a 1450 on my SAT. So my period is my super fuel. But this isn't, oh, mom's being crazy. It's, okay, why? Why do you have to do what? And so when I explained it, if they could be babies about it, or they could be illogical. And if you don't like my logic, look, that's just why I made that decision. And it's interesting because they're thanking me for those decisions. I go, Mom, you were right. And I go, how much money do you want? They're like, no. I just want to tell you, you actually were right. I'm like, yeah. I mean, no poop, Sherlock. Your mom's not dumb. Your mama knows some stuff. And so, but on the flip side, I also gave them liberties. If I was like, you're really good at this. So why don't you help mom with this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you, you could do this kind of stuff. And so I didn't confine them to what we do in America where, well, you're only 15. You're only, okay, you want to learn how to drive? Let's get you behind the wheel. Let me teach you some stuff. Let me teach. And because I spent so much time teaching them, I think I got that respect. We didn't hit them. I mean, every now and then I had to give them a good swat, but for the most part, I was able to discipline them. And I also noticed they didn't like being on my bad side. And that's another thing you're going to notice. Your teenagers, they like making you mad. They just love getting a rise out of you because they're bored. They're like, oh my God, did you see that? Did you see mom's eyes pop out? Did you see she was spitting when she was talking? Oh, I know. I almost had to get her. You really got her mad. You got her good. Okay. Yeah. As teens, yeah, they do that. Right. And then you want to get them back also. But as adults, I think it's interesting because I noticed my boys, I haven't had a fight now, knock on wood, with my boys probably in over 2 years. And I think the reason why is the last fight we had, they didn't like. And I'm not very loud. I know you would think I'd get loud and I would scream and I would spit and I would whatever. When I get mad, I become very introverted. I just lock up, tense up, and I just don't talk. And they're not used to silence. And I'm not giving them the silent treatment. I just don't want to yell and I don't want to fight. So I just get quiet, and they don't like that. And so it's interesting because when I got sick with the stomach flu a few days ago, I was quiet, and all of a sudden, one of my kids was like, are you okay? What's wrong? They needed to know I wasn't mad. And I was like, no, I was up all night throwing up or whatever. Like, yeah. So apparently not having that interaction with me and knowing that we're good. And it's funny because even so, we might have a little disagreement about something and they're like, okay, we're good. I go, yeah, we're good. I don't get ticked off about that. That's not, you guys know where I stand on certain things. So what I recommend with you all, if you do have relationships with individuals or kids where it's like it's not going well, all right, let them explain their logic. They want to know that they could speak. They want to know that they have a voice. All right? They may not always like the hierarchy. I mean, when my parents told me, hey, if you don't like the rules, go, you pay your own bills. Go. And I was like, I'm ready to move out when I was 8. But those conversations are not very productive Explain to them, look, what is it about X, Y, and Z? Talk to me. Teach me. Yeah, and let's either come to the middle or this is where I stand. And, 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So Pfizer has been in the news because there was a gene therapy trial for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and it was being used. And it was a study, a phase 3 trial. Looking at for dastrodrogene mavopanvovec in children. Well, a boy suddenly died while who had been treated with this gene therapy. And Pfizer does not have all the details on why the boy died. Doesn't necessarily mean it was from the drug, but they are working with trial investigators to understand what happened, see if it was related to gene therapy or not. And so they are pausing the dosing, but I guess trials are still undergoing. And they said the safety and well-being of the patients under clinical trials remains our top priority, and we are committed to sharing more information with the medical and patient community as soon as we can. So Duchenne muscular dystrophy is caused by mutations in the gene encoding dystrophin. That is a protein important for muscle health. And so this medication through the bloodstream delivers a gene encoding production of a shortened but functional dystrophic protein into muscle cells. It's a fascinating concept. But the patient was participating in a phase 2 Daliah trial, which was evaluating the safety and tolerability of this 4-dadistrogene mavopanvovec. And it was for 10-year-old boys with DMD. And he was dosed with a one-time gene therapy in early 2023. Now, he didn't die, I think, during the dosing. He passed after, but because whenever you have a somebody enrolled in a clinical trial and then they die, you obviously have to look at, was it the drug or was it another factor? So, It's interesting because whenever we see side effects or we see recalls, people will be very quick to go, oh, this is bad. You see, this is bad. Drugs are bad. And I am fascinated with how we have pendulumed back and forth and oscillated between our trust with medications. In the olden days, you wouldn't put tinctures and things like that necessarily into you unless you really, really trusted it. It was, okay, I'll use, cold water. I'll fight the fever. I'll sweat the fever out. I'll get sunlight. I'll, eat fruits. And there were all these home remedies. But, imagine when penicillin was made. We're going to be giving you a fungus and you're going to take this and it's going to treat you. There was a lot of hesitancy. Look at smallpox vaccines. We are going to actually give you smallpox. We are going to cut your skin, give you smallpox. And that is going to keep you alive when people were trying to hide from smallpox. And so it took a long time to get the public to go, now, wait a second, this is helping. And it's very anti-instinctive. When somebody says, I don't want to take a medication, when a kid is fighting in the doctor's office to not get a shot with medication, that's instinct. It's in our animalistic instinct. If I go up to my cat and dog saying, I want you to take a pill, they're going to be like, oh, hell no. Don't be sticking anything into my body. It's instinctive. But the reason why we as society have embraced it is we don't want to die if we don't have to of pneumonia when we're 3 years old, or of sepsis if we're 15, or of cancer, or of heart disease. We'll take the pill. Now that we have had some reassurance that our life could actually live longer, we could be better with the medication, we embraced pharmaceuticals. Well, then we went the other way. I can't sleep. Well, why don't you listen to some soft music? Why don't you take a lavender bath? Why don't you lower the temperature of the room? Why don't you, kick the dog out of the room so he's not sitting there, all over you and letting you sleep? And but rather than, like, you know what? It's just easier to take a pill. My back hurts. All right, well, why don't we do some stretches? Why don't we do some physical therapy, maybe some chiropractic, maybe some OMM? Let's see what we could do with your chair. But no, you know what? Just give me a pill. So what ended up happening is then we were like, well, look, we have ease. We've taken the medication before. No problems there. We're good. Look at what we're doing with obesity. Okay, well, let's exercise. Let's watch what we eat. Let's come up with a plan. Let's evaluate ourselves for hormones. Let's look at some of the foods we're eating and what it's doing to affect. No, you know what? No, just let me take a shot once a week. So now we have this overdependence on pharmaceuticals, overdependence on medications. And I've always gone for the middle. I can't stand the extremes. I'm not going to trust anything. I'm not going to put anything into my body. Oh, hell no. I have a fever. I'm up to 99 degrees. I need Tylenol. Let your body temperature rise a little bit and fight off the bug. I don't want you to seize with your temperature skyrocketing to 103, 104, 105 super quickly. But if you have a low-grade fever, do you really have to take the Tylenol? And so we need to really educate people. But the part of that education has to include, there's side effects to any single thing you take. And that's par for the course. You're going to have side effects. And you have to understand that you might have to stop the medication if there's those side effects. Those side effects might not be healthy. Didn't Pfizer just had to settle a suit because of Zantac? There was an 83-year-old woman who took Zantac for 20 years and believes it was related to her cancer. And I guess it was a lawsuit. There are multiple lawsuits now linked to cancer because the NDMA in the byproduct of processing. And so, then the vaccine came out. And we went from, we're relying too much on pharmaceuticals to everybody needs this. You have to get it. And so when patients start to speak out going, do we really need this? There might be side effects. Nobody would listen. People got fired. People lost their career. You want to know where a lot of your nurses and doctors are? Well, if they didn't get the shot, they couldn't get back into, they can now, but at this point, they're like, up yours. So we have a big, it's a tall order right now to have proper discussions on what we really should be doing. And it's very interesting because when a patient will call in wanting Zofran, and they're on an SSRI like Paxil or Zoloft or escitalopram, And I tell them, look, there's major drug interactions. You can't mix the two. They say, but I've taken it before and I've been fine. Yeah, I get that. I know. But you could have an abnormal heart rhythm that could occur. So what we need to do is ensure that that won't happen. And if somebody needs to look at your medications, needs to make sure your heart isn't at risk for that. But I took the medication before, I'm fine. How do we know that irregular heart rhythm isn't going to happen the next time? These drugs can't be mixed. Thank God for pharmacists. I mean, I've tried to learn every drug interaction I could, but the pharmacists catch it. Thank God for them. And they will warn you. That's how I knew about it. We used to prescribe that, if somebody needed nausea medicine, if somebody needed yeast medication and they were on Prozac or Zoloft or whatever, and then all of a sudden the pharmacy called me and said, Daliah, they've started to add another warning. And I go, thank you. I would have not known. The company never told me. So we really need to relook at what we're doing with our pharmaceuticals, why we're taking them, and take the ones we need, but not take the ones we don't need. 1-877-DALIA.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our Fantasy Football Pocket Guide for Beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians, only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Welcome back to the Dr. Daliah Show. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So a big concern many of us have is when we have a family member who becomes ill. And many of our family members might not have the finances. And so children, in my family, that was always the case where our grandparents, great-grandparents, they didn't have money, whether they were Holocaust survivors or... and so the younger children, would take care of them. And so one of the reasons why my family was never rich, we never really, were well-to-do, is because anytime we started to make, a little bit of savings, a family member got sick. And if their insurance didn't cover it, well, we obviously we want to take care of them. And so we were always and happy to do it, but we were always either lower income or maybe at the highest middle income, just because we had to take care of family members. Well, many people, they're barely making ends meet now, and they're paycheck to paycheck. And so if a family member became sick, well, you have insurance. It's on you. If they die, if the family member dies, the family member dies, let them try to collect. Well, apparently there is something called scarecrow laws, which a law expert decided to name it, or I think the proper term is called filial laws, which basically make family members responsible for the medical bills. Now, this could be a huge game changer and very, very frightening for many Americans who are like, I could barely take care of my own medical bills, let alone a family member. But on the flip side, I think the reason why these things are being discussed and pursued is because if a hospital is not going to get reimbursed, or a doctor or a medical entity is not going to get reimbursed for somebody who's terminal and they don't have insurance, then that person isn't going to be taken care of. And so you got to read your Medicaid, you got to read your Medicare rules. The house that you think you might be inheriting may go to their medical bills because it was their property at some time. And if they don't have any property, whoever is their family member might have to pay. So this was, I think Forbes wrote a piece on this, and they said over half of the states currently have laws holding adult children financially responsible for the medical care of their senior parents. This could be the nursing home, medical, ambulance bills. These are old laws that aren't always enforced, but can be very easily implemented any time. I guess this one report is being reported by MoneyWise, where in Pennsylvania there was a 2012 and 2019 case where in 2012 John Pittis was forced to pay for his mother's $93,000 nursing home stay when her Medicaid application was not approved in time. And then I'm not sure about the 2019 case. I need to see what happened there. So these quote unquote scarecrow laws, can put a lot of Americans who don't have the money. It could bankrupt many, many families. And I'm mixed on this because we have 73 million baby boomers, 65 and older. Most of these Americans were people who pay taxes, put money into the Medicare system. And they should automatically be enrolled. It should cover hospitalization, doctor bills, medications, and nursing home. But instead, the way the system is no, we got Part A, we got Part B, you got Part D, but not always. And you might need a Medigap if you want Part C, and you need, and there's all these ways around not getting something paid. And older individuals are having some pretty high expenses. Nursing home care, and also think about it, in the olden days, we had lots of kids. Nowadays, we have many people who only had one child, if that child is even still alive, to take care of them. So the system could have worked in the olden days when you had families where, look, we're going to make this work. Medicare is going to cover what we need from the medical side, but we got family who could take care. We could do some home health. We got a team. The average baby boomer doesn't have that. So we need to hire nurses, or we need to go to assisted living, or we need to, or also we're living longer. And so if you have a family member and you have, let's say, brothers and sisters, and many of them don't have money and don't have means or don't care about the laws, it could all be on one sibling. This could be a struggle. And as I said, I also don't want Hospitals and medical centers saying, look, if I'm not going to get paid, sorry. Now, right now, as it stands, doctors, hospitals, staff, they eat it. When somebody dies and insurance pays whatever, discounts it, it just gets eaten. And they take it. And they take it and take it until they go under. And I closed my office. I might have been able to last another year or two, but I'm glad I closed it, especially before COVID. But because nobody would have wanted to pay the bills or come in, or there would have been no way to financially keep it open anyway. So it worked out. But when people don't pay their bills, in fact, we had a patient who we really, really loved, and we apparently the biller sent a bill, for their part, and the envelope came back saying patient deceased. Me and the staff started crying. We loved this woman. I can't believe she died. So we tried to reach out to the family, no answer. I'm like, well, they must be in mourning. Well, a few months later, that patient walks in. And I almost fainted. I'm like, you're dead. And she's like, what are you talking about? I go, we got returned mail saying you were deceased. She goes, oh, that was just my husband. He does that so he doesn't have to pay the bills. So eventually these medical centers, if they're not getting money, they close. That's what you're seeing. And they need state funding. They need government funding. And when that runs out, what happens? I am so fearful that there's going to be a triaging, or there's going to be a discrimination or a picking and choosing, cherry picking of patients, because if there's no money, that facility can't run. And so if you're older and you're requiring chronic care, you could be in a load of trouble. So this is bad all around. This is very, very frightening. And so plan ahead. I know it's not easy. Some of you have been smoking since your military service, and God bless you for serving. And I don't blame you for lighting up. I mean, you had some pretty significant tours. I get it. But if you at all can prevent any of these chronic, diseases to the best of your abilities for as long as you can, you need to. We think that we have a system as of today where there's a hospital bed with our name on it. There's insurance that'll cover it. If insurance doesn't cover something, the hospital will just write it off. No. It's going to get desperate, and it's going to get ugly. And for those of you say, well, then let's just go socialize. Let's just do public option. Let's just go socialize. Socialized means prioritizing. Socialized means rationing. Now, again, if you think you're going to get your Ozempic on socialized medicine, you got another thing coming. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.